can I ask one more thing? What does like the first 30 days look like for someone who starts working with you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So my approach is very individualized. I don't take a cookie cutter approach, but essentially I'll look at their, if you decide to do the leadership nervous system audit, we're going to look at all of the pain points that you specifically individually have, and then essentially come up with actual solutions for those. Anyone who works with me, before we start with the growth and the creativity, right? And we always try to essentially solve whatever issues are actually preventing you from loving yourself unconditionally at the root. And that goes through, yeah, a lot of habits and negative and maladaptive strategies like through shame and blame and poor sleep and even poor execution through nutrition and through even self-talk. So I take a very balanced and comprehensive approach, but first we're gonna really get at the core issues.
I see. Thank you, Greg.
Yeah,
Great presentation.
yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. And what you just said made me think of something that I've talked about. I had a one of my mentors escaped out of Nazi Germany in 39. He worked for a camera company called Leica, and Leica was kind of like Schindler that they made the movie about. The company was trying to get their Jewish employees out of occupied territory, and Henry would talk about making presentations about products. He became very wealthy man, first man to import Japanese photo products after the war into the US. And he said, we're going to give people a headache and sell them the aspirin. And how I interpret that is most of us that we're taking our time to be on this zone. We know, even if we don't admit it out loud, we know there's something more that we need and we're looking for it, but maybe we cannot identify it. But if somebody can help us identify what the headache is and they have the cure, the aspirin, then we're in a better place. So I love the fact that all these different modalities that you're talking about, and I've identified with a lot of them myself, and but I identifying what I need or what each of us individually need and having a safe space to talk to somebody to help us put it into focus and then guide us on how to correct it. I love the whole process.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Thank you. And in psychotherapy, we really focus more on pathologizing and like labeling and like getting at this is the disorder and this is what it looks like. And, while I have that background, my approach is so much more about like anything is possible. And when we can actually integrate, right, our own awareness with being witnessed by a loving person, a loving presence, and then combining that and embracing spiritual technology, anything is possible. I worked with other veterans who essentially were agoraphobic and had generalized anxiety disorder, and their previous therapists essentially really gave up on them, and they said like they just need medication, through the SSRIs and a lot of off-label use of essentially antipsychotics, that can actually again force people to go to sleep so that perhaps they, have different things, but that actually creates numbing, right? So it's a lot more of an approach based off of like numbing and controlling the symptoms rather than getting at the root cause. And so where I really stand out is that my intuitive abilities allow me to help you identify the exact root cause. Perhaps, like you said, Mac, perhaps it's ancestral trauma. The literature shows that descendants of Holocaust survivors who didn't even know that they were descendants of Holocaust survivors have higher cortisol and have more stress, right? Perhaps essentially it's childhood trauma, right? Perhaps it's trauma from and PTSD that hasn't been fully addressed through the VA and through these other systems, right? But if we can get at the very core root and essentially help that inner child heal and connect you with your ancestors and and like I said, really rely on the spiritual technology and combine it with actual cognitive behavioral and strategies around, adapting physiology, then, the sky's the limit.
Yeah, I think you're correct. Um, I think of the emotional and the psychological draw drawbacks. And then, seeing my friend Darlene here, she's been smacking me around for about 8 months now with my personal health, the physiological health. Um, I wonder, how much correlation between the emotional, psychological, and the physical, what that how does that what's the synergy of the complete person?
Yeah, it's very connected. Yeah. I don't know if you're asking Grace or anybody.
Asking you too, because that's why I work with you, and it, and I laugh at that whole relationship in a good way, because yeah, I actually am in touch with myself.
Yeah. Well, and you know that that's part of it. So you relate a lot to what Grace Tzofia is talking about because you can be all in. You can understand intellectually what the purpose is we're doing, understanding what is at the root, right? The data will show us through all the tests that we've run for you. And then you have the process. It's very personalized to you. Nutrition, magnesium, D, zinc, right? You've done it all, inflammation, blood sugar. But sometimes there's this time where people they'll spend all the money on the supplements, but they won't take it. Or we'll set goals. You and I, Mac, we set goals. And you're a star student, so I'm not going to say that you don't comply. But there are people who they get the information, the instruction, and then they still don't do it months and months in a row. They're paying all of this money to hear the same thing. So that is part of why we know we must look at nervous system regulation. How do we address those stressors outside of what the data shows about your cortisol? So yeah, it's crucial. And sometimes it does take longer than a few months because you've got if one is able to talk about it, right? The ancestral trauma, and then you've got your upbringing in this lifetime of trauma. And some people just don't recognize that as relevant.
Grace, do you and Darlene know each other?
Not well, but yeah, I'm excited to connect with you, Darlene.
Yeah, I would love to see the two of you talk in a group mode, a joint stage mode, because I think that the crossover in the subjects, well, they're necessary, and that people don't always get both sides of the story. So I hope everyone's coming to conference and we get to see each other.